Serial killers are some of the most infamous people amongst society. They are characters that infatuate the rest of us as much as they do terrify us. With a lot of serial killers, we already know their whole shtick. How they do what they do, why they do what they do, so on and so forth. However, that's not always the case. Today we're going to take a look at 10 serial killers who were never caught. Let's get started. Number 10. The Atlanta Ripper. Kicking off the list in the number 10 spot is the Atlanta Ripper. Similarly named to another infamous unidentified killer, the Atlanta Ripper was active between 1911 and 1912 and killed 15 black women in Atlanta. In July of 1911, an 8th consecutive body was found with their throats slashed, leading to reasonable panic in the black women community of Atlanta at the time. Almost all of the victims were in their early 20s, dressed up in similar nice fashion, and had some form of formal education. The murderer would stab his victims with a knife and other sharp objects, and almost always mutilate the corpse to extreme degrees. Number 9. The Alphabet Killer. Coming in at number 9 is the Alphabet Killer. Between the years of 1971 and 1973 in Rochester, New York, the Alphabet Killer sexually assaulted and murdered 3 young girls, all of which having a last name beginning with the same letter as their first. On top of this, the killer would bury the bodies in towns that began with the same letter as the letters in the victim's initials, hence the Alphabet title. The details of the murders committed by the Alphabet Killer are nothing less than obscene, and should only be researched by those with the strongest of stomachs. Number 8. The West Mesa Bone Collector. Coming in at number 8 on the list is the West Mesa Bone Collector. This infamous criminal is known for the murder of 11 women, most of which were sex workers, a theme that is all too common as you'll come to see in this video. Though the entity was never caught, someone was onto him for a bit. Cinnamon Belks. She had been warning other workers on the street that someone she referred to as Dirty Cop was removing heads from workers, but unfortunately she met the very fate she warned her peers of. Number 7. Freeway Phantom. Sitting at number 7 on the list is the Freeway Phantom. This serial killer was active during the years of 1971 and 1972, who murdered 6 people, all of which being teenagers. The Freeway Phantom is a name the perpetrator gave to himself in a letter he later left in the pocket of one of his victims. The note reads, "This is tantamount to my insensitivity to people, especially women. I will admit the others when you catch me, if you can. Freeway Phantom." Number 6. The Cleveland Torso Murderer. Next up on the list is the Cleveland Torso Murderer. In Cleveland, Ohio in the 1930s, the Cleveland Torso Murderer, also sometimes referred to as the Mad Butcher of Kingsbury Run, murdered 12 people and potentially even more. He got his names because of his tendency to violently and gruesomely dismember the body parts of his victims. A large portion of the victims had their heads removed, and some of them were even found wrapped in paper and shoved into baskets. Are you enjoying the video so far? We thank you for watching and ask you to like and subscribe so we can keep bringing you great videos like this one. Alright, now back to the list. Number 5. The Long Island Serial Killer. Coming in at number 5 is the Long Island Serial Killer. You may also recognize this mysterious entity as the Craigslist Killer or the Gilgo Beach Killer. As is an unfortunately common theme amongst these cases, most of these victims were female sex workers, specifically those who advertised on Craigslist in the Long Island area. The Long Island serial killer is thought to have murdered anywhere between 10 and 16 people, which were spread out over the course of a whopping 20 years. Multiple remains of the Long Island serial killer's victims have been found in the Long Island area as recently as 2011. While we're still taking the time to identify some of the victims today, we unfortunately have no new information on this perpetrator. Number 4. The Phantom Killer. Coming in at number 4 is the Phantom Killer, also known as the Phantom Slayer and the Phantom of Texarkana. This refers to the unidentified serial killer that wreaked havoc in the Texarkana region of Arkansas and Texas. These events occurred throughout 1946 over a 10-week period. Multiple couples were targeted and murdered on lovers' lanes, quiet stretches of rural roads, and the final attack occurred at the closed-off farmhouse. These murders had the entire area paranoid, with stores running out of ammunition, civilians locking themselves in their homes at night, and the police constantly monitoring the roads. However, the mysterious entity was, of course, never found. Number 3. The Oakland County Child Killer. Kicking off our top 3 for this video is the Oakland County Child Killer. This case involves multiple perpetrators, though the quote-unquote main one is yet to be discovered. Between the years of 1996 and 1997, at least 4 children were murdered in Oakland County, Michigan, in the United States. 2 perpetrators have actually been charged with their involvement in this situation, one of which has already died and the other is still serving a lifelong prison sentence. What's interesting about this case, though, is that a DNA profile has been created through samples left on some of the victims' bodies, except one DNA profile doesn't match anyone's involved in the case. Number 2. Charlie Chopoff. Coming in second place is Charlie Chopoff. This one is a bit confusing, but the case is still considered unsolved, hence the appearance of it on this list. Charlie Chopoff is an unidentified serial killer that murdered 3 black children, and is known to have attempted murdering one other but failed. The consistent trait of Charlie's crimes were his mutilating of the genitals of his victims, all of which being young boys. Where the case gets interesting is that a man named Emo Soto was interviewed for these murders and actually even confessed to one of them, but was found unfit for trial and sent back to a mental institution, so we can't be sure this is actually Charlie himself. Number 1. Jack the Ripper. Finishing off our list in the number 1 spot is Jack the Ripper. Arguably the most infamous unidentified serial killer of all time, Jack the Ripper rained havoc on the East End of London in Whitechapel in 1888. The victims in the string of murders tied to this entity were often female sex workers, who almost always had their throats cut and often had some of their abdominal organs removed, suggesting whoever this person was had surgical knowledge. Multiple people sent in letters to the local police department claiming to be Jack the Ripper, but we can't be sure that those letters were actually him and not a few sick, bored people with nothing better to do. In fact, a lot of the information having to do with Jack the Ripper is nothing more than speculation, as he unfortunately covered his tracks better than almost any other serial killer in history. That brings us to the end of today's video. What did you think? Are there any mysterious figures in this area you have some knowledge on that we may have missed? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and click the notification bell for more. This is Toporo, and we're out.